3 days passed without any word from the Vorthak. Captain Jake Morrison spent most of his time on the bridge, watching the brown and gray planet turn slowly below. Lightning storms covered half the surface, and the radiation readings kept getting worse. Lieutenant Susan Clark monitored the alien communications constantly. She could hear arguments continuing in the underground bunkers, but the Vorthak had stopped talking directly to the human ship. "Captain, I'm picking up something new," Susan said during the morning shift. "The Vorthak are moving people between bunkers. Large groups are traveling through their tunnel systems." Dr. Lisa Park looked up from her station. "That could mean they're consolidating their population for a final vote, or it could mean they're preparing for civil war." Commander Ryan Webb was studying tactical reports on his screen. "The planet's getting worse faster than expected. I'm reading 3 major bunker collapses in the last 24 hours. They lost at least 200 people." Jake felt the weight of those deaths. 200 aliens had died while their people debated whether to accept humanity's offer. Time was running out faster than anyone had calculated. In the cargo bay, Chief Engineer Carlos Martinez was making final adjustments to the Genesis device. Dr. Rachel Morgan worked beside him, checking the biological modification programs. "Rachel, how confident are you that this will work on alien biology?" Carlos asked. "The device is designed to adapt to any carbon-based life form," Rachel replied. "But the Vorthak are the first non-human test subjects. There could be unexpected reactions." Carlos wiped grease from his hands. "What kind of unexpected reactions?" "Best case, the modifications work better than planned, and they become even stronger than we expected. Worst case, the process kills them." Carlos stopped working and looked at her. "You didn't mention that in the briefings." "Captain Morrison knows the risks," Rachel said. "All experimental technology has risks. The question is whether the Vorthak think the risk is worth taking." On Tartarus Prime, the great debate was reaching its conclusion. Elder Grethael stood before the largest gathering of Vorthak in 50 years. Representatives from every surviving bunker had come together for the final vote. Young Kethmore spoke for those who supported accepting the human offer. "My friends, we have fought this dying world for our entire lives. Our parents fought it, and their parents before them. Each generation has been weaker than the last because we spend all our energy just surviving." An old warrior named Dextal argued against the proposal. "Kethmore, you speak of weakness, but I see strength. We have survived where no other species could. We have kept our culture, our language, our pride intact. The humans ask us to throw all of that away." "The humans ask us to transform it," Kethmore replied. "Our culture can survive in new bodies. Our language can be spoken by enhanced voices. Our pride can grow instead of slowly dying." Elder Grethal raised his hand for silence. "The choice before us is not simple. We do not choose between life and death. We choose between 3 different kinds of death." The assembled Vorthak listened carefully to their leader's words. "The first death is the one we face now," Grethal continued. "Slow extinction as our world fails and our bunkers collapse. We die as we are, but we die completely. The second death is the quick extinction of refusing the human offer. They will leave, and we will have perhaps 1 year instead of 18 months. We die as we are, but we die faster. The third death is the death of our current forms. We accept the human modifications and become something new. Our bodies die, but something that carries our memories and our culture continues." The bunker was silent except for the distant sound of another radiation storm hitting the surface above. I'm old," Grethal said. "I remember our world when it was better. But I also remember the stories of our ancestors, who came to this world from somewhere else. They changed to survive here. They became different from what they were before." Dextal stood up. Elder, those changes happened over thousands of years. The humans want to change us in a few days. Yes, Grethal agreed. But we do not have thousands of years. We have months. The vote was taken in the traditional way. Each Vorthok cast a stone into one of three containers. White stones for accepting the human offer, black stones for rejecting it, gray stones for those who could not decide. The counting took hours. Representatives from each bunker verified the results. When it was finished, Elder Grethal announced the outcome. The white stones number 1,431. The black stones number 1,215. The gray stones number 354. Kethmore let out a breath he had been holding. The vote was close, but the majority had chosen to accept the human modifications. Dextal stood again. Elder, I accept the will of the majority, but I ask for one thing. Let those who voted black have the choice to refuse the modifications. Let us die as we are. Grethal considered this. That choice will be offered. No Vorthak will be forced to change against their will. On the Iron Maiden, Susan detected new activity from the planet. Captain, the Vorthak are trying to contact us again. Jake hurried to the bridge. Put them through. Elder Grethal's translated voice came through the speakers. Captain Morrison, we have made our decision. The majority of our people accept your offer, but we have conditions. What conditions? Jake asked. First, those who choose not to undergo. Modification must be allowed to remain on Tartarus Prime until natural death. Second, our cultural records, our history, and our language must be preserved exactly as they are now. Third, the first generation of modified Vorthak must prove themselves on our own world before we agree to colonize others. Jake thought about these demands. The first was easy to accept. The second was reasonable. The third was unexpected, but not impossible. Elder Grethal, we can agree to your first two conditions. For the third, what kind of proof do you want? Use your Genesis device to transform Tartarus Prime itself. If our enhanced people can turn this dying world into something livable, then we will believe your promises about other worlds. Dr. Rachel. Morgan stepped forward. Captain, that's actually a brilliant test. If the device can transform this planet, it can transform anything. Jake made his decision. Elder Grethal, we accept all three conditions. When can your people be ready to begin the process? Those who have chosen modification will gather at the primary bunker in 6 hours. Captain Morrison, I must ask one more question. After we are changed, will we still be able to choose our own path? Or will we become property of humanity? Jake thought about Admiral Nelson's words about the colonial program. He decided to answer with what he hoped was true rather than what he feared might be the reality. Elder, you will be partners with humanity. Partners choose their own path. The communication ended. Jake looked around the bridge at his crew. In 6 hours, they would begin the first alien modification in human history. Carlos, prepare the Genesis device for full deployment, Jake ordered. Rachel, monitor all biological readings during the process. Susan, record everything for the historical archives. Ryan looked out at the dying planet. Captain, I hope we're doing the right thing. Jake watched another lightning storm sweep across the surface of Tartarus Prime. We're about to find out. Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead and stared at the screen in front of him. The scanner showed nothing but empty space and floating rocks. He had been searching the Kepler debris field for 3 days now, and all he had found were broken pieces of old ships and worthless metal chunks. Captain, I'm picking up something big on the far side of that asteroid cluster, said Danny Rodriguez from the pilot's seat. His fingers moved quickly over the controls as he adjusted their course. Jake leaned forward in his chair. The second chance was not much to look at, but she was his ship. He had bought her with his life savings after getting kicked out of the Earth Defense Force for questioning orders one too many times. Now he made his living as a salvage operator, picking through the remains of old battles and hoping to find something valuable. "How big are we talking?" Jake asked. "Really big, Captain. Maybe 2 kilometers long. It's just sitting there, not moving at all." Lisa Chang looked up from her engineering station. She was young, maybe 25, but she knew more about ship systems than most people twice her age. "Could be a derelict. The scanners show massive hull damage." Jake felt his heart beat faster. A ship that size could mean serious money if they could salvage the right parts. "Amy, what do you think? Could be dangerous?" Amy Foster checked her weapons display. She had served in 3 different wars before joining Jake's crew, and she never trusted anything that seemed too easy. "Scanners show no active weapons, no power signature. If something's alive over there, it's keeping very quiet." "All right. Danny, take us in slow. Lisa, I want full scans of that ship. Amy, keep the guns ready just in case." The second chance moved carefully through the debris field. Broken pieces of metal floated past their windows like a graveyard of dead ships. Jake had seen plenty of wrecks before, but this felt different. The rocks around them were scorched black, and some of them had been melted into strange shapes. "Captain, you need to see this," Lisa said. Her voice sounded strange. "The ship is definitely alien. The hull design matches Zenthari construction, but I've never seen anything this big from them." Jake knew about the Zenthari. They were one of the most advanced races in the galaxy, with technology that made human ships look like toys. Their vessels were sleek and perfect, with smooth curves and no wasted space. But this ship looked like it had been through hell. "Jesus," Danny whispered as they got closer. "Look at the size of those holes." The alien ship hung in space like a wounded giant. Massive tears ran along its hull, and entire sections had been blown away. Whatever had done this kind of damage was something Jake never wanted to meet. The ship's surface was covered in burn marks and melted metal. Some of the holes were so big that the second chance could have flown through them. "Carlos, can you access their computer systems?" Jake asked. Carlos Wright had been quiet until now, working at his station with intense focus. He was the best computer specialist Jake had ever met, but he barely spoke unless he had something important to say. "I'm trying, Captain. Their security systems are damaged but still active. Give me a few minutes." Amy studied the weapon scars on the alien hull. "Captain, these blast marks don't match any weapons I know. The energy patterns are all wrong. It's like something was eating through the metal instead of just blowing it up." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. He had heard stories about things in deep space that no one liked to talk about, things that destroyed entire colonies and left nothing but empty worlds behind. "Keep working on those computers, Carlos. I want to know what happened here?" The minutes passed slowly as they waited. The second chance drifted alongside the massive alien vessel, looking tiny in comparison. Jake could see more damage the closer they got. The ship's elegant curves were broken and twisted. Beautiful alien metal had been turned into jagged scrap. "Got it," Carlos said suddenly. "Their main computer is badly damaged, but I can access some of the logs. This ship is called the Shadowbane. It's Zenthari military, definitely not a cargo vessel." "Military?" Amy sat up straighter. "What kind of military ship is this big?" Carlos continued reading from his screen. "According to these records, it's a prototype dreadnought. They built it to fight something called the Devourers." Jake had heard that name before, usually whispered in bars on frontier worlds. The Devourers were supposed to be some kind of nightmare that ate entire star systems. Most people thought they were just stories told to scare children. "The ship was lost 3 years ago during something called the Battle of Proxima Gate," Carlos continued. "The official reports say it was destroyed, but obviously they were wrong." Lisa finished her scans of the ship's interior. "Captain, this thing is huge inside. Most of the alien technology is dead or damaged beyond repair, but the basic structure is solid. The hull is made from some kind of metal I've never seen before. It's stronger than anything we have." Jake stared at the massive ship, and felt something stirring in his chest. It wasn't just greed, though the salvage value would be enormous. It was something else. This ship had been built to fight monsters, and it had failed. But maybe, just maybe, it didn't have to stay a failure. "Amy, what would it take to get this thing moving again?" he asked. Amy looked at him like he had lost his mind. "Captain, this is alien technology. We can't just plug in a human engine and hope it works." "But the hull is intact," Jake said. "Lisa, could we gut the inside and install our own systems?" Lisa stared at him for a long moment. It would be the biggest engineering challenge in human history. The power requirements alone would be massive, and we don't understand how their hull materials work. But could it be done? Lisa looked at the scan results again. Slowly, she nodded. "Maybe. If we threw out everything we know about proper engineering and just focused on making things work somehow." Jake smiled for the first time in days. "Danny, plot a course for Haven Station. We're going to need a bigger workshop." "Captain," Amy said carefully, "are you seriously thinking about trying to rebuild an alien dreadnought?" Jake looked at the broken giant floating beside them. "Amy, this ship was built to fight the worst things in the galaxy, and it failed. But maybe that's because the aliens tried to make it too perfect. Humans don't do perfect. We do stubborn." Carlos looked up from his computer. "Sir, the Zenthari probably spent years building this ship with the best technology in the galaxy." "And it didn't work," Jake said. "Maybe it's time to try something different. Maybe it's time to see what happens when humans get their hands on it." The second chance began the long process of attaching towing cables to the massive alien ship. It would take weeks to reach Haven Station, but Jake didn't mind. He had a feeling that this broken alien vessel was about to become something the galaxy had never seen before. Something that would work not because it was perfect, but because humans had built it to keep working no matter what. The first group of Vorthak arrived at the surface of Tartarus Prime 12 hours later. Captain Jake Morrison watched from the Iron Maiden's observation deck as the alien shuttles emerged from underground bunkers. The radiation storms had cleared, temporarily giving them a brief window to work. Dr. Rachel Morgan was busy in the cargo bay, making final preparations to the Genesis device. The machine had been modified to work on the planet's surface, protected by a special shield that could block the worst of the radiation. "Captain, the device is ready for transport," Chief Engineer Carlos Martinez reported through the communication system. "But I have to warn you, once we start this process, there's no stopping it. The modifications to both the aliens and their planet will be permanent." Jake knew there was no turning back now. The Vorthak had made their choice, and humanity had made theirs. "Begin the transport, Carlos." The Genesis device was too large to fit in a normal shuttle. The Iron Maiden had to use its heavy cargo transporters to move the machine to the planet's surface. The process took 3 hours, during which time more Vorthak emerged from their underground shelters. Elder Grethal stood with the first group of volunteers. There were 200 Vorthak who had chosen to undergo the modification immediately. Young Kethmore was among them, as were many of the warriors who had voted to accept the human offer. Lieutenant Susan Clark monitored communications from the ship. "Captain, about 800 Vorthak have decided to stay underground and refuse the modifications. Elder Grethal is keeping his promise to let them choose. Dr. Lisa Park was recording everything for the historical archives. This would be the first time humans had ever modified an alien species. The process would be studied for generations." On the planet's surface, the Genesis device began its work. The machine looked like a massive metal flower with dozens of arms, reaching out in all directions. Each arm contained scanners and modification equipment that could work on multiple subjects at once. Rachel Morgan operated the device from a control station protected by energy shields. "Beginning biological scans of the first group," she announced over the radio. "All readings are normal for Vorthak physiology. The modification process was not gentle. The Vorthak volunteers had to enter special chambers within the machine where Their bodies would be broken down and rebuilt at the cellular level. The process was painful, and some of the aliens cried out as their bones lengthened and their muscles grew denser. But the Vorthak were tough people. They had survived on a death world for generations. They endured the pain without asking to stop. The process. Jake watched from orbit as the first modified Vorthak emerged from the Genesis device 6 hours later. Even through the ship's cameras, he could see that they looked different. They were taller, broader, and moved with a fluid grace that their original forms had lacked. Rachel, what are the readings on the modified subjects? Jake asked. Captain, they're incredible, Rachel replied with excitement in her voice. Bone density increased by 300%. Muscle fiber strength increased by 400%. Radiation resistance is now 12 times higher than baseline human levels. These Vorthak could survive in environments that would kill us instantly. Elder Grethal was among the first to be modified. When he emerged from the device, his voice was deeper and stronger than before. Captain Morrison, he said through the radio, we feel the change. We are still ourselves, but we are more than we were. The real test came when the Genesis device began working on the planet itself. The machine extended deep probes into the ground and released clouds of microscopic machines into the atmosphere. These machines began changing the very chemistry of Tartarus Prime. The toxic gases in the air started to break down into harmless elements. The radiation storms weakened as the planet's magnetic field was slowly repaired. The dead soil began to show signs of life as the machines introduced new bacterial colonies designed to thrive in extreme conditions. Kethmore, now enhanced and stronger than any Vorthak in history, stood on the surface without protection and breathed the improving air. It works, he said in amazement. The human machine is healing our world. But the transformation was not without cost. The process required enormous amounts of energy, which the Genesis device drew from the planet's core. Tartarus Prime began to shake with earthquakes as the machine worked. Carlos monitored the energy readings from the ship. Captain, the device is drawing more power than expected. At this rate, it will destabilize the planet's core in 72 hours. Jake felt his heart sink. Can you reduce the power consumption? Not without stopping the transformation process, Carlos replied. Captain, we have to choose. We can complete the planetary modification and risk destroying the world, or we can stop now and leave it half-finished. Elder Grethal had heard the conversation through the radio link. Captain Morrison, what does half-finished mean for our world? Rachel checked her readings. Elder, if we stop now, your planet will be better than it was, but not fully livable. The atmosphere will be cleaner but still toxic. The radiation will be reduced but still dangerous. It would buy you perhaps 10 years instead of 18 months. The enhanced Vorthak talked among themselves in their own language. Jake could see them through the cameras, their new bodies moving with power and grace as they debated. Finally, Grethal spoke to the ship. Captain, we choose to complete the transformation. If our world dies in the process, then we will leave it behind. We are no longer the same people who needed this world to survive. Jake realized that the Vorthak had made the same choice humanity would have made. They were willing to risk everything for the chance to become something greater. Rachel, complete the planetary transformation, Jake ordered. The next 72 hours passed in tension. The Genesis device worked at maximum power while the planet shook and groaned beneath it. Volcanoes erupted and new mountain ranges formed as the machine reshaped the world's geology. But when the process finally ended, Tartarus Prime was transformed. The brown and gray clouds cleared away to reveal blue skies. The toxic atmosphere had become breathable. The radiation storms were gone forever. The enhanced Vorthak stood on the surface of their reborn world and looked up at the stars without fear. They were no longer refugees begging for rescue. They had become something new, something that could thrive anywhere in the galaxy. Elder Grethale contacted the Iron Maiden one final time. Captain Morrison, we are ready to honor our agreement. The first group of enhanced Vorthak will travel with you to the 17 Death Worlds. We will prove that your Genesis device can turn any hellish world into a paradise. Jake looked down at the transformed planet and its transformed people. Humanity had not brought salvation to the Vorthak. They had brought evolution. They had turned a dying species into the ultimate survivors. Elder Grethal, welcome to humanity's expansion program. The galaxy is waiting for us. As the Iron Maiden prepared to leave Tartarus Prime, Jake wrote his final log entry about the mission. We found a species asking to be saved. Instead, we taught them to save themselves. The Vorthak are no longer refugees. They are pioneers. Whether history judges us as their saviors or their conquerors will depend on what they choose to become with the power we gave them. The ship turned toward the stars, carrying its cargo of enhanced aliens toward worlds that no normal species could ever hope to claim. Behind them, Tartarus Prime spun in space, no longer a death world, but a monument to the price of survival in a universe where only the strongest endure. The Vorthak shuttle returned to Tartarus Prime, leaving the Iron Maiden in orbit. Captain Jake Morrison walked through the ship's corridors, thinking about the meeting. The aliens had looked shocked when they learned the truth about humanity's offer. Jake wondered if he had made the right choice in being so direct. Dr. Lisa Park was in her laboratory, studying the cultural data they had gathered from the Vorthak communications. She looked up when Jake entered. "Captain, I've been analyzing their language patterns and social structure," Lisa said. "The Vorthak are not just survivors, they're warriors. Every adult in their society has to prove they can fight their environment, to earn the right to reproduce." Jake sat down across from her desk. "What does that tell us about how they'll respond to our offer?" "It tells me they understand sacrifice," Lisa replied. "But it also tells me they value their identity above almost everything else. Asking them to change their fundamental nature might be asking too much." On the bridge, Lieutenant Susan Clark was monitoring communications from the planet. She could hear multiple Vorthak voices arguing through the translation system. The debate had been going on for hours. Commander Ryan Webb joined Susan at her station. "What are they saying down there?" "It's hard to follow all of it," Susan said. "But I'm picking up two main groups. The older Vorthak want to reject our offer completely. They say it's better to die as themselves than live as something else. The younger ones are arguing for acceptance." Ryan nodded. "That makes sense. The old ones remember when their world was better. The young ones only know the dying version." In the ship's cargo bay, Chief Engineer Carlos Martinez was running final checks on the Genesis device. The machine was massive, filling most of the available space. It looked like a cross between a medical scanner and an industrial fabricator. Dr. Rachel Morgan, the ship's evolutionary biologist, was working alongside Carlos. Rachel was new to the crew, assigned specifically for this mission because of her expertise in biological modification. "Carlos, how long would the modification process take?" Rachel asked. "For a single individual, about 6 hours," Carlos replied. "But the device can handle multiple subjects at once. We could modify their entire population in 3 days if they all agreed." Rachel looked at the technical specifications on her tablet. "The changes would be permanent. Once we start the process, there's no going back." "That's the point," Carlos said. "Earth Command doesn't want enhanced aliens who might change their minds later. They want permanent partners for the colonization program." Back on Tartarus Prime, the Vorthak were holding their most important council meeting in generations. The debate was taking place in the largest remaining bunker, deep underground where the radiation couldn't reach. Elder Grethal stood before the assembled population. Most of the remaining Vorthak were present, either in person or through communication links from distant bunkers. "The humans offer us survival," Grethal said in their own language. "But they ask us to become something we are not. We must decide. If survival is worth the price of our souls. A young Vorthak warrior named Kethmore stood up to speak. Elder, with respect, what souls will we have if we're all dead? The humans are honest about what they want. They could have lied to us, promised rescue, and then changed the terms later. An older female named Yethara argued back. Kethmore speaks like someone who has lived only in the dying time. I remember when our world had blue skies and green plants. I remember when we were proud of what we were, not desperate to become something else. The debate continued for hours. Some Vorthak argued that the modification might not be as bad as they feared. Others insisted that accepting the human offer would be the same as cultural suicide. On the Iron Maiden, Jake received a communication request from Earth Command. He went to his private office to take the call on a secure channel. The face of Admiral Kate Nelson appeared on his screen. Kate was the director of the Colonial Expansion Program, the woman who had personally selected Jake for this mission. Captain Morrison, what's the status of your contact with the alien population? Admiral Nelson asked. They're debating our offer, Jake replied. It may take some time for them to reach a decision. Time is something we don't have much of, the Admiral said. Long-range sensors show 3 other dying civilizations in nearby systems. If the Vorthak refuse our offer, we need to move on. To the next possibility. Jake felt a chill. What happens to the Vorthak if they refuse? Their planet continues to die, and they die with it, Admiral Nelson said simply. We mark their world for automated mining operations in 20 years and move on. Captain, your job is to present the offer, not to save everyone you meet, the eye. Communication ended, leaving Jake alone with his thoughts. He had known the mission parameters from the beginning, but hearing them stated so coldly made him uncomfortable. Dr. Lisa Park knocked on his office door and entered. Captain, I've been monitoring the Vorthak communications. They're asking questions about the modification process. They want to know if they'll still be able to think like themselves after the changes. What did you tell them? Jake asked. The truth. The Genesis device changes bodies, not minds. They'll still have their memories, their personalities, their cultural knowledge. But their physical capabilities will be enhanced beyond anything they can imagine. Jake thought about this. Lisa, do you think we're doing the right thing? Lisa was quiet for a long moment. Captain, I think we're doing what humans always do. We're turning a problem into an opportunity. Whether that's right or wrong depends on how you look at it. On the bridge, Susan was receiving a new transmission from the planet. Captain, the Vorthak want to speak with you again. Elder Grethal is requesting another meeting. Jake returned to the bridge and took the communication. Grethal's translated voice came through the speakers. Captain Morrison, we have questions about your Genesis device. If we agree to this modification, will we still be able to have children? Will our offspring be like us, or like what we become? Rachel Morgan stepped forward. Elder Grethal, the modifications will be passed on to your children. They will be born with the enhanced capabilities. Your species will evolve permanently. And these 17 worlds you want us to colonize, another Vorthak voice added. What happens after we make them suitable for humans? Do we remain there, or do you send us to new death worlds? Jake realized this was the question he had been dreading. Elder, the colonial program has identified over 200 potential death worlds in our galaxy. There will always be new challenges, new worlds, that need the kind of people you would become. The communication was quiet for several minutes. Finally, Grethal spoke again. Captain Morrison, you offer us eternal life as eternal workers. We would become humanity's permanent solution to every impossible world you encounter. You would become humanity's partners in expanding across the galaxy, Jake corrected. Your descendants would inherit worlds that no other species could claim. Or, Grethal said slowly, our descendants would inherit an endless cycle of preparing worlds for others to enjoy. The communication ended abruptly. Jake stared at the blank screen, realizing that the Vorthak understood the human offer better than he had hoped they would. Ryan looked at him. Captain, what do we do if they refuse? Jake thought about Admiral Nelson's words. Then we wait 18 months for them to change their minds, or we wait 18 months for them to die. The Iron Maiden dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kepler 442b system. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge and looked at the main screen. The dying star cast a weak red light across space. The planet called Tartarus. Prime looked like a ball of brown and gray clouds with flashes of lightning dancing across its surface. "That's one ugly world," said Commander Ryan Webb as he joined Jake on the bridge. "I can see why the Vorthak want to leave." Dr. Lisa Park was studying readings from the ship's sensors. "The radiation levels are incredible," she said. "A human would die in less than 6 hours on that surface, even with a protective suit. How did any life form survive down there?" Lieutenant Susan Clark was busy at her communication station. "Captain, I'm getting multiple signals from the planet. The Vorthak are very excited that we're here. They're asking when the evacuation ships will arrive." Jake felt a weight in his stomach. The Vorthak still thought humans were coming to rescue them. They had no idea what was really about to happen. "Susan, tell them we need to send a small team down to assess the situation first. Say, we want to understand their needs before we begin any major operations." Chief Engineer Carlos Martinez entered the bridge. Carlos was a short, thick man who had spent 15 years working with experimental technology. His hands were always dirty from working on machines, and today was no different. "Captain, the special cargo is ready," Carlos said quietly. "But I have to ask again, are you sure about this? We've never used the Genesis device around alien life before. We don't know how it will affect them." Jake looked at Carlos seriously. "Earth Command was very clear about our mission parameters. If we find intelligent life that meets certain criteria, we proceed with the plan." Dr. Lisa Park looked confused. "What criteria? What plan? Captain, I thought we were here to establish first contact and possibly help with evacuation," Jake decided. It was time to tell his senior staff the truth. "Lisa, we're not here to evacuate anyone. Ryan, bring up the classified mission files on the main screen." Ryan worked at his station for a moment. New information appeared on the screen. Lisa read it with growing shock on her face. "You want to recruit them?" Lisa said. "Captain, these are refugees. They're dying. They need help, not job offers." "Read the full file," Jake said calmly. Lisa continued reading. Her expression changed from shock to understanding, then to something close to fear. "The Genesis device. You want to change them. Physically change them." Carlos nodded. "The Genesis device doesn't just build things. It rebuilds living creatures too. Makes them stronger, tougher, better suited for extreme environments." "The Vorthak have survived on one of the worst planets in known space," Jake explained. "They've done it for generations. That kind of survival instinct combined with the right biological modifications makes them perfect for humanity's expansion program." Susan looked up from her station. "Captain, I'm getting a new transmission. The Vorthak are sending a delegation to meet with us. They're launching a small ship." Jake nodded. "Good. Ryan, prepare the main conference room. Carlos, bring up the technical specifications for the Genesis device. Lisa, I need you to analyze their cultural patterns during the meeting." 30 minutes later, the Vorthak shuttle docked with the Iron Maiden. Jake and his team waited in the conference room as the airlock cycled. When the door opened, 3 Vorthak walked through. The aliens were humanoid, but clearly adapted for their harsh world. They were tall and thin, with thick skin that looked almost metallic. Their eyes were large and dark, probably evolved to see in the dim light of their dying star. They moved carefully in the ship's Earth-normal gravity, which was much lighter than what they were used to. The lead Vorthak spoke through a translation device that turned his words into English. "I am Greth Al, Elder of the Eastern Bunkers. We are grateful that someone finally heard our calls for help." Jake stood and nodded, politely. "I am Captain Morrison. Thank you for coming aboard our ship. Please sit down." The Vorthak looked around the conference room with obvious relief. To them, this clean, safe environment must have seemed like paradise compared to their underground shelters. "Captain Morrison," Grethal said, "how many ships do you have? How many of our people can you evacuate in the first wave?" Jake looked at his team, then back at the Vorthak. "Elder Grethal, I need to be honest with you. We're not here to evacuate your people." The three Vorthak looked confused. The translator worked for a moment as they spoke among themselves in their own language. "I don't understand," Grethal said finally. "You received our distress calls. You came here. If not to save us, then why?" Jake activated the wall screen. An image appeared showing 17 different planets, all of them looking as hostile as Tartarus Prime. "Humanity is expanding across the galaxy," Jake said. "We've identified 17 worlds that have valuable resources, but they're too dangerous for normal human colonization. We need people who can survive in extreme conditions." Dr. Lisa Park added, "Your people have proven they can live in environments that would kill most other species. That makes you very valuable." One of the other Vorthak, younger than Grethal, spoke up. The translator turned his words into English. "You want us to work for you? To be your servants on dangerous worlds?" "Not servants," Jake corrected. "Partners. But there would be some changes required." Carlos activated another part of the display. Technical diagrams appeared, showing biological modification processes. "The Genesis device can enhance your natural abilities," Carlos explained. "Make you even stronger, even more resistant to radiation and toxins. You would become the ultimate survivors." Grethal stared at the diagrams. "You want to change our bodies? Change what we are?" "We want to help you become what you need to be," Jake said. "Your current form is dying with your planet. We're offering you a chance to evolve, to become something that can thrive anywhere in the galaxy." The three Vorthak talked among themselves again. Their conversation grew heated, even though the humans couldn't understand the words. Finally, Grethal turned back to Jake. "And if we refuse this offer?" Jake met the alien's dark eyes. "Then you continue as you are. We leave. Your bunkers fail. In 18 months, your species becomes extinct." "But if we accept," the younger Vorthak said, "we stop being Vorthak. We become something else." "You become better Vorthak," Lisa said, though her voice showed she wasn't entirely convinced of her own words. Grethal stood up slowly. "This is not the salvation we expected, Captain Morrison. You offer us survival, but at the cost of our identity." "I offer you evolution," Jake replied. "The choice is yours." The Vorthak delegation left the conference room to return to their shuttle. Jake watched them go, knowing that he had just presented an entire species with an impossible decision. Ryan looked at the closed airlock door. "Do you think they'll accept?" Jake stared at the image of Tartarus Prime on the screen, with its poisonous storms and failing light. "They're survivors, Ryan. They'll do whatever it takes to keep surviving. The question is whether they'll hate us for giving them that chance."